My sister smiled while telling everyone what I paid for. They weren't supposed to know. I never thought silence could feel heavier than debt. But that night, standing in my kitchen in Boston with my phone buzzing on the counter, I realized something was wrong before I even picked it up. It was late, past midnight. Hospitals don't call at that hour unless something's gone bad. I remember staring at the screen, seeing an unfamiliar New York number, and feeling my stomach drop like it already knew the truth. When I answered, the woman on the line didn't ask if I was sitting down. She just said my sister's name and told me she'd been admitted through the emergency room. Surgery. Immediate. Life-saving. Those were the words that stuck. Everything else sounded like noise. My sister Donna had always been the brave one. The kind of brave that looks like independence on the outside, but feels like loneliness when no one's watching. We grew up together in Boston, two sisters in a loud house with louder opinions. Our parents meant well, but success was always measured out loud. Grades, jobs, salaries, appearances. Donna learned early that love felt safer when it came with proof. So when she turned 18 and said she was moving to New York for college, everyone clapped like she'd already won. I hugged her tight and whispered that I'd miss her. She smiled and told me not to worry. She always smiled. After she moved, life got busy for both of us. I stayed in Boston and fell headfirst into film production. Set design sounds glamorous when you say it fast, but the truth is it eats your time alive. Late nights, early calls, weekends that don't belong to you anymore. Donna was chasing her own thing in New York. At least that's what everyone thought. We didn't talk every day or even every week, but once a month we'd steal an hour. No filters, no pretending. We'd complain about our parents, laugh about relatives, gossip a little, then promise to visit each other soon. Those calls mattered more than I realized. That's why the hospital call felt unreal. Donna was never the one who needed saving. She was the one who left, the one who handled things. When the nurse asked if I was family, my voice cracked before I could answer. She explained that Donna had been brought in after collapsing. Complications, something that had been ignored for too long. They needed consent. They needed payment information. She asked if Donna had insurance. I already knew the answer before she said no. I booked the earliest flight I could find. At the airport, surrounded by strangers dragging suitcases, I felt strangely calm. Like my body had switched into problem-solving mode and shut off everything else. I landed in New York before sunrise and went straight to the hospital. Donna was pale when I saw her. Smaller somehow, tubes everywhere. Machines beeping like they were counting down something precious. When she opened her eyes and saw me, she tried to joke. She said, "Guess I overdid it, huh?" I laughed because that's what she expected. But my chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. When the doctor explained the surgery, he didn't sugarcoat it. It had saved her life, but the recovery would be long. Then came the part no one warns you about, the bill. 6 figures, the kind of number that doesn't even feel real until it's pointed at you. Donna stared at the floor while he talked. She didn't ask questions, she didn't argue. She just nodded like she'd already decided something painful and final. Later, when we were alone, she broke. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears sliding down her face. She told me she hadn't told our parents because she couldn't stand the idea of being disappointed. Everyone thought she was building a career in New York, living the dream. She didn't want them to know she was barely surviving. Paycheck to paycheck, student loans are still hanging over her. No insurance because she kept choosing rent over safety. She said shame was louder than pain, and I understood exactly what she meant. I asked her why she didn't call me sooner. She said she didn't want to be a burden. That word hit harder than any bill. Donna had always carried herself like she owed the world proof of her worth. Asking for help felt like failure. I told her she wasn't a burden. I told her she was my sister. She cried harder then, like she'd been holding it in for years. That night, while she slept, I stepped into the hallway and called the billing department. I didn't fully think it through. I just knew I couldn't leave her alone with that kind of weight. I had savings, not endless money but enough, years of long hours, missed holidays, saying no to vacations. It was meant for my future, but at that moment, the future felt pointless if my sister didn't have one. I handled everything quietly. Payment plans, transfers, paperwork that made my head spin. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone. Donna promised she wouldn't either. Not because I asked for secrecy out of pride, but because I wanted to protect her. I didn't want her to be talked about like a problem that came with a price tag. I didn't want relatives whispering numbers instead of asking how she felt. I told her this was between us. She nodded. She always nodded. After the surgery, she recovered slowly. I stayed a few days, then went back to Boston. Life didn't pause just because something big happened. Sets still needed building. Calls still came early. On the outside, everything looked the same. On the inside, I carried a secret heavier than any set piece I'd ever lifted. Sometimes Donna would text me late at night, saying thank you again. I'd tell her to stop. That she didn't owe me anything. That this was what sisters do. But part of me wondered if she believed that, or if she was already counting something she planned to repay. Months passed, Donna got stronger. She sounded lighter on the phone, Like surviving had given her permission to breathe again. I was glad. That was the point. I didn't need credit, I didn't want a medal. I just wanted her alive and not crushed by debt before she even had a chance to stand up. Then came the family gathering. A regular thing. Loud, crowded, full of stories everyone already knew by heart. Donna flew in from New York. She looked good, healthy, smiling. Everyone hugged her like she'd been gone longer than she had. At some point, someone mentioned how strong she was for surviving what she'd been through. How brave, how lucky. Donna smiled, and for a second I thought that was where it would end. But then she kept talking. She said she wouldn't be here without me. People laughed at first, thinking she meant emotional support. Then she said it clearly, that I paid for it. Not just the surgery, the debt, every dollar. The room changed, conversations stopped, eyes turned toward me. I felt heat rush to my face, not pride, exposure, like something private had been ripped open in front of everyone. I forced a smile because that's what you do when you don't want to make a scene. People started saying things, calling me generous, a hero. Someone even said I was an example of what a family should be. But none of them asked why it had to happen that way. None of them asked why a young woman nearly lost everything just because she got sick. They saw the money, not the silence that came with it. Donna looked relieved. Like a weight had finally lifted from her shoulders. I realized then that while I chose silence to protect her, she had been suffocating under it. And that was something I hadn't considered. After Donna said it out loud, the room never fully recovered. Conversations tried to restart, but they sounded forced, like people were afraid to step on something fragile. I kept smiling because that's what I've learned to do when I feel cornered. My parents looked at me with something new in their eyes. Pride, maybe. Confusion, too. My mother squeezed my hand and whispered how proud she was of me. My father nodded slowly, like he was adding this moment to some invisible list of things that proved we raised you right. But none of that landed the way it was supposed to. I didn't feel seen. I felt stripped. Donna stood beside me, lighter than she had been in years. I could tell the secret had been burning her from the inside. Keeping it quiet wasn't protection for her anymore. It was a cage. Watching her breathe easier made me feel selfish for wanting to pull the secret back. Still, something inside me ached, because that silence had been my shield too, and now it was gone. Later that night, after people started leaving and the noise softened, Donna followed me into the kitchen. She asked if I was mad, not defensively, just tired. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say you promised. I wanted to say you took something from me without asking. But I looked at her face, really looked, and I saw the weight she had been carrying. The nights she must have replayed that hospital room in her head. The fear that she survived physically but would never escape the shadow of what it cost. So I said I wasn't mad. That was a half-truth. I wasn't furious, but I wasn't okay either. She told me she couldn't keep pretending she did it alone. That every time someone called her strong, it felt like lying. She said carrying the secret made her feel like she was stealing credit for surviving. She needed people to know the truth, even if it was uncomfortable. Even if it embarrassed her. She said she needed to stop hiding. I listened, I nodded, but inside something cracked quietly. What she didn't understand was that I hadn't paid the debt just with money. I paid with absence. With years of working myself into exhaustion, so I'd have savings in the first place. I paid with the fear that if something went wrong, I wouldn't have enough. I paid with silence because silence felt safer than turning her pain into family gossip. I paid because the system demanded it, and because love doesn't wait for permission. That night, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, listening to familiar house noises that suddenly felt foreign. I kept thinking about the looks on people's faces, about how quickly money turns suffering into a story people feel comfortable praising. No one asked Donna why she hid it. No one asked why she didn't have insurance. No one asked how close she came to losing everything. They just saw a clean ending, a bill paid, a sister saved, something easy to clap for. The truth was messier. The truth was that Donna had been drowning quietly for years, that she'd been working jobs that barely covered rent. That student debt followed her like a shadow. That she skipped doctor visits because she couldn't afford them. That she learned to live with pain because pain didn't send invoices until it was too late. None of that fit into the neat version people wanted to celebrate. The next morning, Donna and I sat at the kitchen table with coffee that went cold between us. We talked about New York, about how lonely it really felt, about how different the dream looked when no one was watching. She admitted she'd felt like a fraud every time she told family she was doing fine. That word had become a shield. I told her I'd felt invisible carrying the secret, that I didn't want praise, but I didn't want to feel exposed either. We sat with that discomfort instead of rushing past it. It wasn't a fight. It was heavier than that. Over the next few weeks, the story spread the way stories always do. Through phone calls, texts, relatives reaching out to tell me how amazing I was. Some asked questions that felt too personal. Others made comments about how Donna should be more careful, more responsible, like illness comes with a moral lesson. I learned quickly how people talk when they think a problem has already been solved. Once the bill is paid, empathy fades. Donna went back to New York with something new in her voice. Confidence, maybe, or relief. She started therapy. She found a better job, not high paying, but steadier. She talked openly about her health. That part made me proud. I didn't want her to live in hiding anymore. Still, every time someone brought up the money, my chest tightened. Because I realized something uncomfortable. I had chosen silence not only to protect her, but to avoid confronting how broken the system really was. I worked in film. I built fake worlds for a living. Sets that looked real from the outside but were hollow underneath. Walls that didn't support weight. Doors that didn't lead anywhere. And yet I hadn't fully accepted that the real world worked the same way. That a single medical emergency could erase years of effort. That being responsible wasn't enough. That survival often depends less on hard work and more on timing, luck, and whether you get sick in the wrong country. Months later, Donna called me crying again. This time it wasn't fear, it was anger. She'd gotten another medical bill. Smaller but still painful, follow-up care, tests, things insurance should have covered but didn't. She said she felt like no matter how hard she tried, she was always one step behind. I listened, and something in me shifted. I realized that paying the debt hadn't fixed the root of the problem. It had just bought her time. That was the part no one applauds. Time doesn't come with a ribbon, it doesn't look heroic, but it's the most expensive thing there is. I started talking differently after that. Not loudly, not dramatically, but honestly. When people praised me, I redirected. I talked about how dangerous it is to tie worth to independence. How silence can feel safer than asking for help. How shame keeps people sick longer than pain ever could. Some people listened. Others didn't, but I stopped shrinking when the topic came up. Silence had been my price, and I was done paying it. Donna and I grew closer in a new way. Less secrets, fewer half-truths. We still joked, still complained about family, still laughed about the same old things. But there was more room now, more honesty. We learned that protecting each other didn't always mean staying quiet. Sometimes it meant letting the truth be uncomfortable. Looking back, I don't regret paying the debt. I'd do it again without hesitation. But I regret believing that silence was the only way to love someone. I regret thinking that keeping things hidden made them smaller. It didn't. It just moved the weight somewhere else. The darkest part wasn't the money. It wasn't the surgery. It wasn't even the fear of losing her. The darkest part was realizing how easily someone can disappear under expectations. How success can be performed while suffering stays invisible. How close my sister came to losing everything because she thought asking for help meant failing. When Donna told everyone what I paid for, she wasn't trying to betray me. She was trying to survive out loud, and I was forced to face the truth that I had survived quietly. We had chosen different prices. Hers was shame, mine was silence, and neither of us could afford them forever. Now, when I think about that moment in the living room, the room going quiet, the stares, the forced praise, I don't feel exposed anymore. I feel clear. Because the story isn't about generosity. It's about how broken things can be beneath the surface. It's about how love sometimes looks like money because the world refuses to offer care without a receipt. I saved my sister's life, but she saved me from believing silence was strength. And that's something no bill could ever cover. If this story hit you, don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more real stories that don't stay quiet.